Hi, everyone, and welcome to Week 5 of the Team Draft Super League. We're going to be watching a match between Dem Boyz and Team Madison. I'm joined by Sam Pardee.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
Not bad. So let's take a quick look at the format for this.
Yeah, so we're going to be playing Team Draft, and the way that this tournament works is it's going to be over a total of 8 weeks. Each team is going to play 2 matches, which may not sound like a lot to cut to top 4, but bear in mind that a Team Draft match to win, you have to actually have won 5 matches within your one match. So that ends up being quite a lot. So each team that goes 2-0 will advance to the top 4. Each team that goes 0-2 will be eliminated, and the remaining teams that go 1-1 will play for their spots in the top 4 as well.
Right. So both teams we're watching today won their first round, so they're both 1-0. So if they win this is a win and in match for both teams. If they lose, they still have a chance to win later on and make it.
Yeah, each team functionally gets 2 win and ins. So they have outs to make it even if they lose tonight, but I'm sure both teams involved would love to just get a win right now and lock it up for themselves.
Yeah, this tournament is filled with tough teams, so you've got to get your wins as fast as possible. You don't want to risk things later on. Let's talk a little bit about how Team Draft works. So it's 3v3 draft. So it's a little different than your normal 8-person drafts that you probably do at your local store. The teams alternate seats. So it's not really as cooperative as a normal draft would be. You're often going to hate draft cards from your opponents and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a huge difference with Team Draft. In a normal draft, there are 7 other people in your pod, and you're only going to play against 3 of them. So you're less than half of the people in your pod are your opponent. In the Team Draft, every person you're passing to or being passed from is your opponent because you alternate seats. So if you, me, and Jacob are in a draft against PGO, for example, every card we pass, we have to know that the enemy team could end up with it. And because you're on a team with the other people in the pod, even if you don't personally lose to that card, if your teammate does, it's just as bad for you. It's still a loss for your team. So you have to really be careful about what you pass and what you're not trying to cooperate to build the best decks. You're really trying to get one over on the people next to you.
Right. So if you're picking, in a normal draft that's more cooperative, if you're picking between a great rare that's not in your colors and a pretty good card for your deck, you should probably take the pretty good card for your deck. You're not that likely to face the rare, and if you do, it'll only be 1 out of 3 rounds. But in this, it would be a big mistake.
Right. That's another great point, is that you play against it even though you don't personally play against it, your team plays against it in 3 out of 3 rounds. So every round ends up being played against whatever bomb you passed for your team, which is really tough.
Right. So let's talk about the 2 teams we have today. The first one is Dem Boyz. That's Alex Hain, Steve Rubin, and Mike Sigrist, a.k.a. Siggy.
Yeah, these are 2 people who are actually on my Pro Tour team, Team Face-to-Face Games, and then we work with Team CFB Ice, so I'm obviously very good friends with Siggy as well, and no biases here or anything.
Oh, no, of course.
Yeah, but these are excellent players, really strong, 2 Pro Tour champions and a Player of the Year, so really great players. And Siggy is, in particular, an old school guy, so he's from the heyday of team drafting. He used to play a ton of team events back when they had team pro tours and things like that. So he's been around the block when it comes to team draft. Yeah,
team draft used to be a really popular format, and it kind of fell off for a while and started to resurface with the presence of more team limited Grand Prix. So for someone like Siggy, this is his bread and butter.
Yeah, he's done a ton of them.
And then the other team we have today is Team Madison, which is Sam Black, Justin Cohen, and Matt Severa. And this is also a pretty great squad.
Another great team. And these 2 teams actually have, I don't know if they played, but they met in the top 4 of Grand Prix Louisville, I believe.
Nice.
Which was a team limited event. Team Madison ended up winning that Grand Prix outright, while the Dem Boyz were eliminated in the top 4. So
it's actually a back-to-back for 2 of their members. Justin and Matt won the previous Team Grand Prix with Micron, who's also in the Team Draft Super League on a different team.
Yeah, so there's a lot, as you can see, a lot of talent here and a lot of success at the team events that exist currently, in addition to old school's play.
Yeah, Justin and Matt actually beat us in that Team Grand Prix, which we're not all salty about.
Yeah, I'm over it. Like I said, no biases. There's like some people who I test with for the Pro Tour and some people who beat us in the Team GP Top 4.
Yeah, absolutely no biases whatsoever. So the person we're actually going to be following in the draft is Sam Black, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, he's well known as one of the best limited players, and from what I understand, he just does insane preparation for draft. He apparently drafts, 50 times before the Pro Tour, and he just works really, really hard at it, and has had one of the best win rates in limited at the Pro Tour, if I recall.
Yeah, I've worked with actually all of these people for Pro Tour testing at various points in my Magic career, and yeah, working with Sam was a pleasure. He works really hard, and him and Justin are roommates, and they work together, and they both just jam a ton of drafts and are really good at figuring out the various archetypes and draft formats and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think working together like that also creates some team synergy. They should have a really good sense of what they value and what the people on their team like in the draft format. So they should be able to get good signaling to each other to some extent.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, at least for the draft portion, you can't communicate. And even during the games, most high-level players tend not to ask for advice too often. And so, it seems like it shouldn't matter that much, but it's still, I found the team synergy is still pretty important.
Yeah, you and I, when we play, we tend to always play with Jacob Wilson if possible, just mostly because we've played a lot together. And I think that really does help. When you ask me a question, I tend to know the context, and it adds a lot of value over time when you work with the same people over and over again.
Yeah, which applies to almost all of the teams in the Team Draft Super League. These are teams that have worked together before.
Yeah, they're all very familiar with each other and should be able to help each other out a lot, which I think just is huge. So,
at least for the players that you've worked with, do you know kind of what their preferences are in draft, what they like to see?
Siggy is a man who loves to block. I know that for sure. One of his favorite things in draft is drafting a slower deck that's good at blocking, but he's really, he's a great limited player. I think he's the best limited player on our team, and he values everything pretty accurately, I would say. He likes to stay open, but if he can, I think he loves to slide into a nice slower blocking deck that is good at that sort of thing.
Cool. Yeah, definitely think flexibility is extra important in team draft because the people to your left and right are trying to make it as hard as possible on you to get a good deck. So if you like forcing an archetype, it's not really going to pan out well in team draft.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things about team draft as well, is the decks you end up seeing are so much worse than a normal draft, because in a normal draft, you're trying to have your neighbor be in blue-red while you're in black-white, and you don't overlap in colors, and that's great. Whereas in team draft, you are trying to have your neighbor, you're hoping that you're in black-white, and your neighbor is in black-white, and you're going to go 1-2, and they're going to go 0-3. That you've done your job if you make that happen.
Yeah, and it also is a six-pack draft, so that's another factor. The less different people you have drafting, the lower the quality. For example, if you took it to the extreme, if you did draft by yourself, you would just open 3 packs and build a deck out of that. So
right. Definitely.
Even if it was a cooperative draft, just having 6 players instead of 8 would make the average deck a little bit weaker. In team draft, it's even more extreme.
Right, because there's all this active, I'm not going to pass a good card. I'm going to instead take a medium card, take a good card for you over a medium card for my deck, and then you're faced with a pack that now has a medium card for somebody else's deck and a bad card for you. So, you end up taking the medium card for them, and the hate drafting continues on like that.
One interesting factor of team draft is that there's a lot of known information because almost every card you have is passed by one of your opponents. But the packs you open, that's not true for. So your first picks actually have a little bit of surprise value.
Yeah, theoretically, if you were some sort of super genius, if you had a team of super geniuses, you could know the entire contents of the other people's decks by, reverse engineering the draft, or minus 3 cards, minus their 3 first picks. Obviously, it doesn't actually work like that. People don't have memories that are that good. So what they end up doing is they're like, oh, did you see this notable card? Did you see this Magma Spray 5th that I passed? And then they go, oh yeah, I ended up getting the 6th pick Magma Spray. Or if they didn't, then you're like, oh, well, they have Magma Spray, and you can play around that accordingly.
And try to guess what colors they are. Because, if all the enemy drafters are likely to be blue, you're more likely to want reach creatures or, spells that hurt flyers in various ways.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed comes up. One of my favorite team draft stories is actually at Pro Tour Theros. We were doing a team draft, and there's a 1 black instant that kills a black creature, and one of my teammates was splashing black already and realized that we didn't have any black decks in our group. Therefore, our opponent probably have 2 black decks, so he decided to main deck destroy a black creature, which is not something you would often see, but in this instance works out pretty well. So that's sort of a really extreme example, but maybe you might want to main deck a destroy an artifact card because you know that they have some powerful artifacts or whatever, things like that.
Right. So the deck building portion of team drafts also tends to be a little bit more interesting than, normally in draft, you kind of have 23-ish playables, and then maybe the last couple slots are close. In team draft, the deck building portion is a lot more interesting, I would say. Yeah,
you're usually in a regular draft, you're sort of building your deck as you go. Oh, these are my good cards. Oh, this is my 24th card. I'm hoping not to play that. And usually there's some agonizing over the last 3 cards you add to your deck. Whereas in team draft, sometimes I know that guy has a Bounty of the Lux and an Edifice of Authority. Maybe I should main deck this destroy a enchantment or artifact.
Right. There's also some weirdness where, because team draft is the decks are a little less streamlined and less powerful, you have an opportunity to get a little bit greedier. So, some of the more expensive cards are going to be more appealing. Splashing colors is going to be more appealing, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you definitely see a lot more, I would say, scrappy decks. You end up with sort of, this is my deck that's got 17 playables in my 2 colors, and we had to splash for a 3rd one, and that's fine. As long as your deck is better than the person to your left, you did a good job. That's the way I tend to think about team draft. Right. As long as you can beat them, or as long as you end up with a better record than them, that's really what you're going for.
Yeah, definitely. So because decks are a little less streamlined, another thing that might happen is some of the synergy cards might lose a little bit of stock. This format tends not to be too synergy based, but what type of cards do you think might lose some stock here?
Yeah, so you might see something like Drakehaven get a little worse just because you have fewer opportunities to pick up those cyclers that you really want, or the Wander in Deaths that you really want to get back your cyclers. So cards like that, or maybe some of the -1/-1 synergy cards like Nest of Scarabs also lose a little bit of their luster. Right.
Yeah, this format is a little weird because, a lot of the time you do just draft a normal deck anyway, right? Like, an Exert deck is kind of just a normal creature deck. Maybe you have some synergy, but doesn't tend to be a whole lot.
Yeah, it is one difference worth noting. This format, after the Pro Tour, looked to be pretty aggressive. In team draft, I don't think that will be true, just because it's harder to have, even though it doesn't sound like it, an aggro deck is kind of a synergy deck. The synergy is a lot of creatures that cost 2 and combat tricks, and that's a little harder to have come together.
If someone thinks you're drafting the all 1-drop deck, they can, take the Slitherblade's 10th pick so that they don't wheel and completely cut you off, which will almost ruin your strategy. So it's pretty gutsy to go for a deck like that. I actually talked to Sam Black a little bit about this format, and I know he kind of likes the Slitherblade deck in general, but I would kind of be surprised to see him draft it in a team draft.
Yeah, I think he would have to really get an indication that it was open and that people weren't trying to do that, and that people didn't realize that he was trying to do that. Because that's sort of the thing is, that you're trying to screw over the people to your left and right, but they also know that they're trying to screw you over and that you're trying to screw them over. So they're not going to read too much into the signals you give. So it's sort of a leveling game in some ways like that.
So because of all that, how do you kind of approach the first few picks? Do you just take the best card out of the pack because colors are so crazy? Or do you still try to kind of pull together a deck?
My strategy tends to be to take the best cards early. Maybe if I open a super bomb, I'll try to really stake my claim there and not move off of it and just, know that I'll pick up, let's say I open a great green card. I'll pick up some green cards in this pack. Maybe the person to my left will figure out that I'm in green, and so they won't pass me a lot of good green, but that's when I'll try to get a second color and then, just hope to try and get things going there. But also you have to be really mindful of what you're passing. So if you open up, let's say the two best cards in your pack are the same color, that's actually the ideal situation.
Right.
Because you take the best one, you know that the person to your left is going to take the second best card probably, and then you can just keep cutting that color and keep them off of it.
Right. And how far are you supposed to go with that? Like, do you want to give them one more card of that color so that they really get hooked on it? Or do you want to just like cut it immediately? Is there kind of like an art there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine balancing act. It probably depends on the power level of the card you're passing them. Like, let's say that you open a pack with Liliana and foil Liliana's Mastery, let's say, and you take the Liliana, and then the next pick you have like a final reward and another good black card. That's then you're really doing it. You can really put them into black. But if you have like a final reward and something else, hard to know. Should you take the final reward? Should you take a different card and try to really get them cut into black?
All right, so it sounds like the players are ready. So let's head down to the draft.